In this video, we'll talk about some of the key characteristics of rules in games. The ideas we'll cover here are based on the book Half Real by Jesper Juul, who's written a lot of really fascinating books that go in depth into games and the way that they work. Should be no surprise, all games have rules. If an activity doesn't have rules, it's something else. Maybe it's make-believe, maybe it's a story, and those things are great in their own right, but what we're talking about here are structured rules and how they behave. So, rules, in a nutshell, make clear which actions are allowed or forbidden within a game. They also make clear how those allowed actions influence the game and its outcomes. Game rules are not open for debate, and players need to respect the rules. Now, this definitely doesn't mean that rules can't be negotiated before play starts. For example, many folks have variations on the rules of the board game Monopoly, and hopefully they'll discuss those before starting a game with someone. The point is, the rules should be unambiguous. They need to be clear and defined enough to be coded into software interactions in the case of digital games, or to be written down into a book or a set of rules like we see here with the official rules for cornhole. In addition to rules, games have goals and conflict. A goal is simply something that must be accomplished by the player within the rules of the game. A goal is usually a desirable outcome. Now, conflict comes into play where there are contradictory goals between participants in the game. Now, those participants might be other players, like in the case of, say, a racing game, or in software-based games, those other participants might be the computer. So as an example of that, you can see on the right here a screenshot from Katamari Damacy, a game where you need to roll around a sticky ball and pick up little objects from a room or a domestic setting. And you have a goal to reach a certain diameter within a certain time frame. So in this case, the conflict is between the player and the computer. So the amount of conflict often goes hand in hand with the difficulty of achieving a goal. And it's a general goal of game designers to try to more or less match the skill of the player to the difficulty of the goal. Obviously, if a game is way too hard or way too easy, it's really not fun. Another key characteristic of a game is that it needs to have outcomes. So the rules need to lead to something. And those outcomes need to be variable. So just imagine how boring a game would be if you knew exactly how it would end every single time. And it's the suspense or drama that's created by the unknown outcome that really makes a game fun. For an outcome to be effective, it needs to be unambiguous. So for example, in the game Mario Kart, like we see here on the right, one of the key outcomes is the order that you finish the race in. So if you come in ahead of other racers, your outcome is better. And if you come in behind other racers, your outcome is worse. So of course that outcome is very objective and easy to measure. Similar to the rules, the outcomes are not open for debate. So if I lose a race in Mario Kart, I can't suddenly say, well, the goal here was to come in last, so therefore I win. And in the case of digital games, those unambiguous outcomes should be fairly straightforward to build into software interactions through code. So of course, any given game might have different sets of outcomes, and those outcomes have different values. To put it more succinctly, some outcomes are better than others. And the values of those outcomes might be conveyed through different means. So for example, explicit statements or instructions in the game, like win the race, or numerical scores that are assigned to actions that lead to those outcomes. We can see examples of both of those methods in the game Mario Kart, where we're assigned higher numerical scores the closer we finish to first in a race. And we're also given lots of text prompts throughout the game that suggest that coming in first is better than coming in last. In general, achieving a positive outcome from a game usually requires more effort or skill than achieving a negative outcome. So again, with the example of Mario Kart, it takes more skill, more hand-eye coordination to finish a race first than it does to finish a race last. And in general, players usually attach a positive emotion to a positive outcome and a negative emotion to a negative outcome. So I'm usually happier when I come in first in Mario Kart versus when I come in 12th. One of the coolest things about games and rules is that they're not real life, for the most part. When we enter into a gameplay, we're entering into a fictional place and time. Some people call this the magic circle. So a game and its rules and the value of its outcomes only exist inside this circle. And outside the circle, the game doesn't apply. So we can see an illustration of that in this diagram here, where we have the same event in the real world versus in the magic circle. Now, in stark reality, the event is kicking a ball into a net. If we don't happen to be playing a soccer game, that's all it is. It's just kicking a ball into a net. But if we're in the magic circle, where we're adopting the rules of soccer and agreeing to the value of the outcomes of that game, kicking a ball into a net means scoring a goal. And for the most part, the meaning of that outcome will only exist inside the magic circle, unless we've negotiated some real-world consequences to happen based on that outcome. Some examples of this might include gambling on the outcome of a game, or Olympic competitions where medals and international recognition is awarded to athletes who win. All right, so that's a quick overview of some of the key structures of game rules.